Netflix has put in a sizable bid to take Warner Brothers Discovery and its IP assets. We're going to dive into what that means, all of the implications of it, and what it means for AEW going forward. Is AEW really in any jeopardy? And where will they be airing in 2027 and beyond? Plus, I got news on Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns and their third match in their saga. When is that planned? Is it even in the works? What does it mean? We're going to dive into all of that here on the podcast. I got a loaded podcast for you guys. So please, if you do enjoy this, hit the like, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and let's get into this, man. I'm so excited to hop into this. I got a lot to get to. All right, Warner Brothers Discovery and Netflix. As some of you probably do know, Warner Brothers Discovery has been in cahoots with a few companies, some of them being Comcast, Paramount, obviously Netflix. They've been talking with them about selling their IP assets. They've been selling certain parts of their company. So let's dive into this. This comes from The Wrap. This report comes from The Wrap. They say, these exclusive talks clear the road for Netflix to acquire the Warner Bros. Studios HBO Max and a treasure trove of IP assets like Harry Potter and the DC Universe. Netflix, which once aspired to be like HBO when first embarking on original content, is on a course to become its next owner. Warner Brothers Discovery has selected Netflix after the streaming giant offered $27 a share for the studio and streaming assets, a mix of cash and stock worth $82.7 billion. Netflix disclosed that it would have to pay a breakup fee of $5.8 billion if it walked away, while it would get $2.8 billion if Warner Brothers Discovery backs out. All that comes from The Wrap. So what does all this mean? Well, I can tell you this. This means that everybody's tribalistic expectations of what was going to happen are being bucked. They are being categorically proven wrong and completely false, because everyone was saying, if this happens, if Netflix buys part of Warner Bros., then AEW's finished. AEW's going to go under. We don't know where they're going to air. They're cooked, right? Well, I think everything that we're seeing with this story completely disproves that. It completely proves it false. This deal is about IP. That's it. It is about intellectual property, i.e. Looney Tunes, Looney Tunes, Sopranos, The Wire, Harry Potter. Everything that HBO owns, everything that Warner Bros. Owns is now Netflix's. The thing is, Warner Bros. Does not own AEW. AEW is a company who is in a contractual agreement with Warner Bros. To air their show on their networks. That's different than IP. It's much different than intellectual property. So AEW doesn't really have a foot in this deal, and Netflix doesn't have any agency or power over them, even if they wanted any. This is validated by the fact that Warner Brothers Discovery's networks will become a company in and of itself. According to PW Insider, Netflix is not purchasing the linear channels owned by Warner Brothers Discovery. Those channels will be spun off into a new, separate, publicly traded company known as Discovery Global. This is where AEW will live. Okay, the reality is Netflix has no real power over AEW, even if they wanted any, like I said. They are only acquiring IP, and AEW is left almost entirely out of that conversation. AEW will live on Discovery Global until 2027, and I personally have my doubts about anything past that, as I know most of you do. I've seen a lot of people saying that after 2027, no streamer will want to mess with them. That, once the deal is up with Warner Brothers, now that they're in cahoots with Netflix even tighter, no one's gonna want to mess with AEW. And I kind of understand that. I can kind of see that. But at the same time, I really can't. Because I look at the current streaming landscape and I see Peacock, who was just in the wrestling scene with WWE before they got shafted. They might want to get back into the wrestling scene. They might want to get AEW. I look at something like Apple TV, who's had their own foray into the sports world. I also look at Fox on the cable side of things. And we know that there have been rumors of them picking up AEW Shockwave. So I'm really not completely worried that AEW is not going to have a place to get to. I think there are going to be streamers who want to take them on. Amazon's another one of them. They run their pay-per-views on Amazon. There's no reason to believe that Amazon wouldn't want to take that partnership even further. So I'm really not worried about them finding someone in 2027, because the odds that they do go somewhere else in 2027, they're not like unlikely. I'm not going to shoot that down entirely. I think they could go somewhere else in 2027. But the narrative that they are not going to have any other streamers interested in them, I think, is just completely false. Tony Khan was asked about the entire acquisition at the ROH Final Battle media call. And this is what he said. He said, quote, "I can tell you for sure, at least until the very end of 2027, going into 2028, we are going to be here for years and years to come. Over 2 more years with AEW on TBS, TNT, and HBO Max, I am very excited about it." Now you can read into that quote however you want. You can read into that as, oh, this is earnestly what he thinks. This is earnest messaging. Or you can look into that as corporate mumbo jumbo. I prefer the latter. I prefer to look into it as this is just him trying to PR his way through this. So I'm not going to look at it as anything other than that. We'll just see what happens. So again, Peacock, Apple TV, Amazon, Fox, there are options for AEW. I would not be worried about that. I don't think AEW will struggle to find a streaming partner, because if you look at TNA, who just landed a deal with AMC, who is not a small station, they're a decent sized station, Breaking Bad, Walking Dead, Better Call Saul, all that stuff. They just landed a nice little deal with AMC. If TNA, the most notoriously pathetic wrestling promotion, can do that, I have no qualms, or rather no holdups about AEW being able to do that. So let's continue here. That's not where the story ends, okay? Because the deal itself hasn't even gone through, right? It's just a bid that Netflix has put up. It's a very strong bid that they've kind of binded themselves into. It's not a deal that's gone through and that is officially official yet. If you remember, Netflix put up a $5.8 billion breakup fee into the deal, which has yet to go through. Why would they do this? Because the deal has yet to go through the regulators. The deal still needs to go through the DOJ. They don't want regulators and the DOJ and everything surrounding that to slice the deal. They want it to go through. So that's why they've kind of put in this $5.8 billion binding fee, because without it, it makes it much easier for the regulators to slash the deal. So the breakup fee is basically there to bind the companies together and to make it harder for regulators to end it. According to Variety, a group of major industry players has sent an urgent open letter to Congress, warning of an economic and institutional meltdown in Hollywood if Netflix succeeds in acquiring Warner Bros. Discovery. The letter was sent via email to members of Congress from both parties on Thursday from an anonymous collective identifying themselves only as, quote, concerned feature film producers. On top of that, Paramount is now reportedly looking to launch a hostile bid for Warner Brothers. They feel their $30 a share all-cash offer is higher than what Netflix offered in terms of cash, stock, and the value of the cable business spinoff. So everybody, including industry peers, are saying this deal is complete hooey. This is wrong. We cannot let this go through. We must stop this. And why are they doing that? Because the Netflix CEO, one, is crooked, and two, has a very lopsided view, wrong view of where movies should be taken. Now, this is a bit bigger than wrestling. This really isn't about wrestling even. But his vision for movies is people should watch them from home. He said it before, like, if we could have Barbie and Oppenheimer on Netflix at home, like, that's much better than people wanting to go to the theaters. You got to meet the consumer where they're at. You need to meet them to their wants and their desires. That's his mindset. And that's how he sees the film industry. He does not want to keep movie theaters afloat. He does not want to enable movie theaters. He wants all the movies on Netflix. And so Netflix acquiring all this IP and all this stuff is really harmful to that industry. Paramount and all these industry peers, they see it that way too. They don't want movie theaters to die out. They don't want one company to have just everything in their control, because that's a monopoly. They don't want all of the IP, the important IP in Hollywood to be concentrated on one streamer. That's very harmful. That's how monopolies form, and it's how an industry starts to die. And so that's why you're seeing this deal kind of get some pushback. That's why you're seeing Paramount really start to push back. That's why you're seeing some industry peers start to push back. And it's why the deal still has to go through regulations and the Department of Justice. We'll see what happens there. It could still get blown up. It might not even go through. We don't know. But those are all the details surrounding it. Those are all the facts. And you can make of it what you will. But I know that some of this is just bigger than wrestling. There's only so much you can glean from this from a wrestling perspective. Some of it is just bigger than wrestling. The long and short of this really is the movie industry is in peril. And Paramount and other people in the industry are working to fight back against that. I think it's important to step back when a story like this comes out and reflect on pro wrestling discourse, because a story like this brings out the worst in fans, brings out the worst in the IWC. There are two types of people who engage with this story. There's one type of person who honestly is just misinformed. They don't understand the facts. And then there's a second type of person who they do get the facts, but they refuse to accept them. And instead, they deliberately disinform people. They deliberately spread false and categorically wrong information just to deceive people and just to fit their agenda. That's part of what we're seeing here. And you see this a lot of times in other wrestling stories, other wrestling, journalism examples. You see this where a story will come out and there is a way to spin it to fit a certain segment of the fandom's narrative, and they take that opportunity. And so right here, what you're seeing is people who are very anti-AEW, very, very pro-WWE. You're seeing them spin this and say, well, AEW is going to die. AEW is going to go out of business. WWE just bought AEW. They know that is completely false. They just don't care because they want it to fit their agenda and they want it to fit their narrative. So it's important to step back and realize that, because if you don't realize that, you could kind of get caught up in that storm. Don't be that type of person. Do not spread disinformation. If you're misinformed, that's completely fine. Just become informed. But do not spread disinformation, because that is a terrible platform for discourse. Do not let people tell you that AEW is dead. I'm not saying that from a tribalistic perspective. I'm not saying that to fit an agenda. I'm just saying that because it's true. Every fact I've given you here should tell you that AEW is going to be completely fine, and that this deal is just larger than wrestling. There are much more heavier implications to this deal that do not concern themselves with professional wrestling. So, make of all of this what you will, but do not be a pusher of disinformation. That sucks. We got Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. Match news. So obviously they wrestled at WrestleMania 39. Then they wrestled at WrestleMania 40. And they had a great match both times, in my opinion. Get interesting news about these two. In a third match, according to the Wrestling Observer newsletter, it's been confirmed that a Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns match for the WWE title is in the plans, although not necessarily at WrestleMania. Now I know when a lot of people heard this news, maybe you saw this headline originally that they were planning a third match between them. Everyone just kind of assumed, oh, WrestleMania. It must be the third match between them in the main event of WrestleMania. And that would be kind of logical to assume. I assumed that. But apparently it's not at WrestleMania. They also say Seth Rollins has talked about wanting to wrestle at Mania. It's been said this week that it is a possibility, but it's too early to determine if it can happen. Now this is good. Now, not the Seth Rollins part. Obviously, I don't want Seth Rollins to be injured. We don't know if Seth Rollins is going to be at Mania. That's just a bit of a crapshoot. It's just kind of, we don't know. But this is good that they are not earmarking Cody and Roman for me. Why is it good? To me, it's good because how long have we been saying that WWE needs to find a spark? They need to find a certain degree of life to their product. And part of that has to do with the aging main event scene. Their main event scene is older than dirt. They're like fossils up there. And so if they can bring that age down, if they can let some newcomers into the main event and really push things forward and maybe open it up to some people who haven't main evented WrestleMania before, literally anybody, that would give the product some degree of spark, some degree of newness and freshness. And so that's what I feel like we're seeing here. I am all for Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns 3. Does it have to happen at WrestleMania? No, it doesn't. It just doesn't. You could do it at SummerSlam. You could do it at literally any other pay-per-view to make it feel bigger. I imagine they'll probably end up doing it at Saudi Arabia because that feels like a place where they would do it. I wouldn't put it past them to do it there. But it doesn't have to happen at WrestleMania. You can reserve that spot for someone who will elevate your product and evolve your product to a new level. Someone younger, fresher, faster, all that stuff, all that jazz. So I'm very, very happy that they are not just going back to the same old well and going back to Cody and Roman. That's very, very encouraging to me. Becky Lynch, we got news on her. So you might remember about a week and a half ago, Becky Lynch told Bert Kreischer, I think that's how you pronounce his name, on a podcast that there was a male main roster talent who would pursue sex and women's talent and blacklist them if they either accepted or refused his sexual advances. I'm sure some of you remember that. I'm sure some of you heard of that. Very weird and terrible, if it's true. However, we have an update now. According to Fightful Select, none of the talent spoken with claimed they knew who Becky Lynch was referencing about a male talent blacklisting female talent who wouldn't sleep with him. It was intimated that WWE planned to look into it upon hearing it, but there have been no further updates. Look, man, I don't know who WWE's trying to protect. I don't know who they're trying to cover up for, but this is so hilariously and comically on the nose for WWE in 2025. You look at everything they've gotten wrapped up in, all the scandals they've found themselves in, and now you have this, and all of a sudden Fightful Select reports WWE is like, oh, well, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. Trust me, bro. Really? I mean, it's kind of funny, but at the same time, it's kind of not because it's so crooked. Just because talent haven't heard of the news or haven't heard of this like spreading around the locker room, that doesn't mean it's false. That just means maybe they hadn't heard of it. So I don't understand why Becky Lynch would lie about this. I don't think she has a reason to lie. And for me, I trust Becky Lynch more than I trust anything WWE says. Just on a ethical level, I trust Becky Lynch on an ethical level more than I trust the big billion-dollar corporation from Stanford. Just on a baseline level. John Cena. We got news on his original retirement plan. While speaking to Bill Simmons of The Ringer, John said that the plan originally was to do a full year. This goes to show my ignorance of the business. I wanted to do 220 dates. Good Lord. Just take the year off from everything. Hop on a bus, do a full WWE calendar, and totally say goodbye. Thank goodness the business isn't like that anymore. I'd be done. They only needed me for 36. So obviously no one wants to work John for 220 dates. Who wants to see that? In other words, who wants to see John Cena die and keel over? I don't want to see that. The dude is what is he, almost 50, 40 something? He can't work 220 dates. That is insane. He needs to sleep. The thing is, he also didn't need to work only 36. And so if you're WWE and you have John Cena, someone who is of his star power, he comes to you and says, hey, I want to work. I really want to give 110% of my time this year. Why would you turn him away? I don't understand that. To further that point, why would you turn him away and then cook up the year that we just got? It was creatively sparkless. It was so bare bones. Rarely did we ever get a match, a John Cena match this year, that most people were universally excited over. There might have been 3 all year, not counting the Gunther match. So I don't understand why you would ditch that for what we got. there's got to be an in-between. He can't work like 100 dates? 60? 80? I mean, I know I would have liked to see more John Cena. I know that in the lead up to WrestleMania, especially with the very ambitious creative that they were going for, I know that I would have liked to see more John Cena. But you know why they kept him pegged down at 36 is because they didn't want to overexpose him. And you know what that plays into is it only reinforces the sentiment that WWE is nothing but greedy. Because why would they want to stay away from overexposure? Well, if you don't overexpose him and if you underexpose him every time he's on TV, it'll feel bigger and they'll make more money. So they deliberately diluted John Cena's retirement tour just to get an extra buck. I mean, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of extrapolating it a little bit far, but the point still stands. They were worried about overexposure, and because they were worried about overexposure, they pared him down to 36 dates. When in reality, what would have been a much easier and much more fun version of John Cena's retirement tour is have him work 60 or 80 dates and have him just wrestle the roster. Have him just put people over. Have him have an amazing year. Great matches, left, right, and center, TV main events, tags. It is such a fumble. It is a fumble to epic proportions that I cannot fathom John Cena's retirement tour. And it is something that will only kind of be redeemed by the Gunther match, which we'll hop into in a second. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But it is something that can only be redeemed by that, because that is such a creatively sound match. It is such a cool match to book. But they can only revive it so much. They can only regain what they've lost so much, because they've already fumbled it so epically. However, in the same interview, John did say, I could not give an ounce more of effort. I don't think there's a single thing I would have changed, and I like that it isn't perfect. Sure, John. Sure. He's really humble, and I really admire him for having that trait. But does he really feel that way? Is he really okay with the retirement tour he got? I mean, is he really okay with the fact that for about 6 to 8 months out of the year, he was completely shunned on a creative level? Like, he was a non-factor. Does that not bother him a little bit? They turned him heel, and he was just a non-factor. He was there. No one believed in him as a heel. WWE essentially set him up to fail during his retirement tour, because even turning John Cena to heel in the first place, like, there's no way you can really live up to the lofty expectations that sets. So you're basically setting him up to fail, and because of that, there has to be some underlying, not like anger, but frustration from John Cena. I have to imagine that he is not just okay with how his retirement tour went. I have to imagine that there's some frustration. Speaking of John Cena, Gunther versus John Cena is currently set for Saturday night's main event, and it is shaping up to be awesome. Like I said, this is one of the only things, maybe the only thing, that can not revive, it's already 6 feet under, but this is one of the only things that can bring back some semblance of positivity in his retirement tour. This is the only thing that can really add a silver lining to it. We can see, oh yeah, we got like 8 horrible months, but at least we got the Gunther match. At least we got the AJ match, which was pretty good. There's stuff there. Gunther beat LA Knight on this past episode of SmackDown, and in my opinion, it was undeniably the best LA Knight match I have ever seen. Now, did Eli Drake have better matches, like maybe way back when? Sure, but I haven't seen those. This was incredible. I thought LA Knight was terrific in this match. I gave it 3 3/4, and I thought it was a hyper-competitive match that acts as a work rate showcase for what LA Knight is capable of being part of. He just showed the world what he can be a part of, what he can do, why he is a good worker. As a babyface, I thought LA Knight responded exceptionally well to all of Gunther's in-ring minutiae. The tiny things that Gunther gives faces the opportunity to play off of. This was a giant display for LA Knight. Like, seriously, the way he was selling for Gunther, his facial expressions, body language, all of that stuff. Babyface sensibilities from LA Knight. It was great. And just, I thought he really responded well to Gunther. After the match, Gunther said that he will make John Cena tap out at Saturday night's main event. And I think this sets up an incredible story. The story they're setting up here is mouthwatering, man. I mean, it makes you fundamentally question anyone who detests this match. This match and the story, the narrative coming into it is extremely moving and very, very striking. They will build this match around the idea that John Cena could tap out. They might even tease it a couple times. Do that, he might tap. Will he tap? They might do that. He will not tap out. Instead, Gunther will put him to sleep. Gunther will pass him out. And just like John Cena has said his entire career, he will not give up. In this match, he will not give up. He will refuse to tap out. So everything that Gunther is saying now, telling him to give up, I'm going to make John Cena tap out, is going to be proven wrong by John Cena's signature slogan, never give up. And to me, that is so moving, it almost brings a tear to my eye. It is so good. I love that angle they're going for there. I can't wait to watch it. Seriously. I think Gunther is the absolute perfect person to retire John Cena. Because I don't think there's someone who can bring quite the quality you want to see out of John Cena. There's no one better to do that than Gunther. Gunther is the exact type of heel you would call on in this type of situation. The type of heat he can generate and the type of heat that John offers heels, it's the perfect storm. It's like two extremely compatible chemicals coming together and colliding and exploding at the right time. Gunther is just, in so many ways, extremely compatible with John Cena's sensibilities as a babyface. And just emotionally and on a personality level, when their characters clash and how the crowd will react to that, I think it plays perfectly. So I cannot wait to see what these two cook up at Saturday night's main event on December 13th. It should be incredible. Is AEW planning an all-women's pay-per-view? Well, here's what Tony Khan said at the ROH Final Battle presser. He says, absolutely. Whatever platform or however it were to happen, there's a lot of ways it could happen. Definitely an event. This is another quote. An all-women's event, women from all over, is something I have thought about again and again. Potentially a global wars. Bringing women from all over could be great too. So we're looking at maybe a forbidden door for women. A women's forbidden door would kind of be what we'd be going for. A CMLL Stardom joint show, I think is very, very interesting. This gives you the opportunity to put women like Bozilla, Sari, Saya Kamitani, all of them on the same card with women like Mercedes, Willow Nightingale, Jamie Hayter, Toni Storm, all of them. It gives you the opportunity to put together this extremely intriguing card. And so if they were to do something like this, I'd be all over it. A lot of potential there. Will they do it? Ultimately, it's probably all just talk from Tony Khan, because I don't see them doing this anytime soon, realistically. With the way their women's division is booked, I just can't really see this happening right now. The women still get about one match per week on Dynamite, and they're still generally shafted down the card. So I don't see them getting a pay-per-view when that is the reality they face on the week-to-week shows. It's just something to keep in mind. If the women aren't being booked as you'd want them to on the week-to-week television shows, why would they get a pay-per-view? If they can't even get a tournament right, the tournament's been a bit wonky. If they can't get the women's tag tournament right, if they can't get all that right, what makes you think they're going to be able to book a women's pay-per-view? Or what makes you think that they're even going to have the motivation to do that, the incentive to do that? Well, I mean, I think the incentive is pretty clear, but does Tony Khan see that incentive is the thing? Time will tell. We will see, but there's something there for sure. Speaking of women's wrestling, Red Velvet and Mercedes Moné faced at Ring of Honor Final Battle this past Friday, and Red Velvet beat Mercedes Moné for the ROH Women's TV title. I think it was like, I didn't watch the show. I want to say it was like a vacant title of some sort, and they were kind of fighting to become, or like someone was interim champion. I don't know the details. Someone comment down below, tell me what happened with that match. How did it go? I'd love to hear. I didn't watch it, so please tell me how that went. But Mercedes dropped the belt, and I just wanted to touch on this real quick because I saw this result. I was very, very, one, surprised, and two, very encouraged that she had dropped the belt. Obviously, we're telling this story with Mercedes Moné recently. She keeps losing in big matches. Lost to Toni Storm at All In, lost to Chris Statlander at Full Gear. And so to me, it seems like we're telling this story with Mercedes Moné that she can't get the job done when it matters. Can't really close the deal when the time comes. And so right now we're seeing this again. We're seeing this kind of same angle play out, where she's now losing. What I'm asking now is, are we about to start the Mercedes Moné downfall arc? Because that's kind of where it's been pointing to. Everyone's kind of been saying that's where we're going to go from here. She's going to lose twice in the world title matches, and then she's going to drop her belts. She's going to go a little bit crazy, and we're going to see a different type of Mercedes come out that we haven't seen yet. Because she has all these belts. What is it, 14? She's got to put people over for those belts. She's got to lose them sometime. And so when she loses them, it'll feel big, it'll feel impactful, just like this one did. And it'll play into a larger story they're telling about Mercedes' psyche, her mindset. Where is she at? So I think that's just so intriguing, so narratively juicy. And I'm very interested to see how they follow up on this, if they follow up on this. So we'll see where it goes. But I think what they're setting up for Mercedes down the line in the months to come with her titles and with her character's psyche are very, very interesting. So we'll see what happens. Finally, I want to finish this out with AEW Full Gear. Pay-per-view buys, they are in. We have the numbers. And look, if you needed any more proof that AEW is going to be here to stay, that they will not be going under, that they will not be dying anytime soon, this is it. The event generated an estimated 140,000 pay-per-view buys, according to a report released this week by one source. This number not only exceeded the internal projections, but is also being hailed as possibly the biggest pay-per-view performance for AEW since All In Texas. Furthermore, Full Gear 2025 is now the highest performing AEW event ever on HBO Max, demonstrating the power of the streaming platform to boost visibility and attract new fans, despite the difficulty in tracking precise numbers due to lower pricing. If you need, again, if you needed any more proof that AEW is an attractive commodity, that streamers will want them, they're projected to become profitable, I think it's this year or next year maybe. If you want any more proof, man, it's right there. I'm very encouraged by that. A lot of interesting stories. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything down below. How do you feel about the Warner Brothers Netflix deal? How do you feel about all the implications of it? And where do you stand on it? Also, where do you stand on an all-women's pay-per-view for AEW? Is it something you'd like to see? And do you want to see Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns? Or would you like to see another match, main event WrestleMania? I want to see it all in the comments section below. Let's get a conversation started. Again, please do leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this podcast. Support the channel. I would really, really appreciate it. And until next time, guys, have a good one.